Howdy, y'all. Caleb here. Last weekend, I went undefeated with Thunderlizard. Yes. This is probably my best showing in a little while. This is just a local tournament. One dayer, we did 3 games. But I pulled out Thunderlizard with the new points drops and did pretty well. So I'm pretty happy about that. Here's the final standings. I came in second place. Jonathan, very good player, playing Suns, beat me out on some victory points. He also went 3-0. The top lists were Suns, me with Seraphon. We had a Bone Reapers, Petrifex Elite there. I dodged both of those. I think those were lists that I might have had a little bit of trouble with, both the Suns and the OBR. But the next 3 are the 3 guys that I played. Juan with Hammers of Sigmar, Esteban with Tzeentch, and Jacob with Khorne. They all went 2-1, so all very good players with good lists. And so I'm kind of happy to see that the Thunderlizard list did well against some good players here. I think we had 16 or 18 total players in this tournament and had a lot of fun. So we'll get into my list and then quickly go through my games of what I did at the tournament. So my list, Thunderlizard. With the new points drops, I had to go... I wanted to go all monsters, but I ended up just not quite committing all the way. But I think there's a point and there's a purpose for it. So let's look at the list. We're Seraphon Thunderlizard, obviously, which allows us to do Stegodons as battle line, and all the monsters can do 2 monsters actions. Grand strategy, I went with Repel Corruption. I just kind of wanted to try something a little different. Repel Corruption can be good on sun maps because what this requires you to do is not have an enemy unit wholly within your territory at the end of the game. So some maps end up having a small territory, and so that's easier to do. But I have a lot of shooting in this list, so I think that if I'm still in the game at the end of it, I can shoot off whatever is trying to get in my territory, or at least that's the plan. If they have something that can teleport in their turn 5, then it's a tough one to do. But I wanted to try it. Triumph Inspired, if I got that. I don't think I ever used it. Leaders, I'm taking 2 Saurus Old Bloods on Carnosaurs. At the price of $220. That is a very nice piece. Now, it's a lot of support, but it supports the rest of the army well. Because I have these 2 big platforms with quite a few wounds that can be fairly tough, that are able to dole out 2 command points per phase. So I can do all-out attack for all my shooting on 2 different monsters. I can do... Unleash Hell on 2 different monsters when they charge in. So, very good unit here. There was a time where I think I did all-out attack from 1 Carnosaur onto 2 different monsters and all-out defense on 2 different monsters from the other Carnosaur. So, you can get a lot of use out of them if you're kind of using the support correctly. Occasionally, you charge them in, they do some damage. I think I got a couple bites off, which always feels good when you tell them it's 5 damage. But really they're there for the support. One of them is my general with Vengeful Defender. I really kind of vacillated between going with Thickly Scaled Hide or Vengeful Defender. Ended up going Vengeful Defender because I did take some Agrodon, so it provides a little bit of a use there. Artifact Arcane Tome, that's there purely just to get Magical Dominance, which is kind of the only thing I have available turn 1, depending on the map and depending on how it kind of plays out. But I'm going to try for Magical Dominance usually turn 1. I don't have anything for Surround and Destroy, really. And some maps make it difficult to do Intimidate the Invaders turn 1. The other battle tactics I'm going to be looking at are a Saurus one. If I get a Carnosaur or Agrodon stuck in, I can do the Saurus one. I can do the Skink one with Stegodons or Bastildons. So I have those available to me. In the rare case that I table the opponent, I can get my 3 monsters into their territory and run them, and that will be another one I can get from Seraphon. So I did include a battle line unit of Agrodons. They become battle line when you have a Saurus General. I brought these because I think it offers something that a full monster list doesn't have, and that's kind of your Alpha Strike. With Vengeful Defender, you can get these guys usually across the board. And because the rest of the monsters in this list shoot, you can shoot off the screen that is protecting their valuable units and then send the Agrodons in to attack it. That never really happened with the matchups I had. but that was kind of how I built it. So it does give you a play here of a highly mobile piece that can do quite a bit of damage in melee, but also just tie up the opponent in their territory if you need to, and then you can shoot, get maybe 2 turns full shooting into them by the time they've cleared those Agrodons. So I have 3 Stegodons, all with the Skystreak Bow as extra battle line, and then 2 Basildons with solar engines. I have been down on the Basildons with solar engines for a while. I think they're starting to get cheaper, and paired up with the Old Blood and kind of a list like this where everything's shooting, they provide a decent role here where you have that high rend damage that you can put into targets that the Stegodons just can't attack. And so they are tough, especially when paired up with an Old Blood. Now they're going to be on a 2-up. You're going to give both of them all-out defense if they're getting attacked. I try to run them with not run them, but I try to move them with a Carnosaur dedicated to them to make sure that they can get off Unleash Hell, both of them, when something charges. All-out defense, all-out attack to keep them buffed up. So all that can fit into 2 battle regiments because I've got 1 hero, 2 battle line, and a monster go into each battle regiment. So that makes me a 2-drop army at 126 wounds. It's not bad for a Thunderlizard list. I am 10 points under. I think when I was playing, I thought I was at an even 2,000, so I never worried about Triumph. This list was made right at the last minute before the tournament after the FAQ. So, all right, that's my list. It was quite a bit of fun, and I think it has a little bit of flexibility. One of the things I'm trying to do is, I did this a lot in all 3 games, is spread these guys out. Keep them within range of the general, the ones that are going to be supported by that. Keep the Basildons with the other Carnosaur, but try to spread these monsters out because it makes it hard for the opponent to focus down a couple monsters. If they're spread out, they can still do what they need to do, which is shoot just about anywhere on the board with their long range. All right, game 1, we're playing Border War. All 3 of these maps are from the War Coda battle plans, and so they're a little bit different than what you see in the General's Handbook, but pretty interesting and pretty fun maps here. So this first one here is Border War, very similar to what the old Border War used to be. You score 2 for holding, score 1 for yours, 2 for either of the ones in the middle, and then critically 3 for the opponents. And that actually comes in pretty handy because I'm able to get a Stegodon over to their objective and score those 3 victory points quite a bit. So I'm playing Esteban, and he has Tzeentch. He's got 3 different heroes, a Gaunt Summoner, a Magister, and a Magister on disc. Importantly, the Gaunt Summoner has Merciless Blizzard, and then the Magister is bonded to a Kronspine. Ooh, this is like my kryptonite for my list, having a Kronspine. Because a Kronspine, if it kills a monster, it levels up. So I have a few monsters in my list. He also has an ability to kill off that Magister. I think it was maybe with the Endless spell, Eye of Tomes or something, or Shield of Fate, or I'm not exactly sure how. But he's able to kill that Magister off, and then that makes the Kronspine go wild. His battle line are just a couple units of Carrick Acolytes that are going to run along the sides of the board, score Surround and Destroy, and also protect his Varangard as a screen. So then he has his Kronspine, and then a big unit of Varangard, reinforced. That's a lot of beef right there. I think he has a spell that can give them a 5-up ward, which just makes them really tough. 2 endless spells, Eye of Tomes, and Prismatic Palisade, which is also brutal against me. Now, he's going to be eating that Prismatic Palisade a lot, but if not, he's going to cast it and shut off my shooting for any units within range of it. So this list is like custom built to fight mine. I'm kind of scared of this one. But the way the battle went down, I was able to pull out a win. Here's our deployment, and this is kind of going into my first turn. So he's a 1-drop. He makes me go first, and I was able to choose Defender, which means he had to place down first, and so I could line up my forces versus his Kronspine. So I put my Agrodons directly across from his Kronspine because I knew if I'm going first, that's my only chance really, is to pin it back, try to keep it into his territory for a turn or 2, and not let it level up. Maybe I can de-level it. Maybe he casts a spell and he fails to eat it, and then it's gone. That would be ideal, because if I can't get on top of that Kronspine, it's going to eat me alive. I lined up my Bastiladons here to deal with the Varangard because they have such a good save that my Stegodons aren't going to do much damage versus those Varangard if I get them into it. I know I only have to hold one objective, so I push one Stegodon onto there, and then I'm just going to try to spread out the rest of my monsters as much as possible on the board to try to keep them from getting tagged up with the Kronspine. So I do make that charge. I think I had to roll I had to show a 6 with my +1 to charge, or maybe I had to show a 7 or something. But I made that charge and got under the Kronspine. I did de-level it turn 1, which was nice. But because of where he placed it, and he placed it smartly, he had his Wizard with Blizzard right here, which was within 12 of pretty much anywhere I had to get onto that Kronspine. So if the Kronspine had killed a few of those off in combat, maybe I could have pulled enough, but he didn't. He didn't do enough damage. They had Mystic Shield, and so it didn't kill off enough of them in combat. So on his turn, he was able to Blizzard them and just spiked hard that Blizzard. So this was going to be scary because in his turn, if he Blizzarded those guys off, then that Kronspine was going to be free to go move about the board and kill the rest of my guys. But after his Blizzard, he left one Agrodon on 1 health. Now he did like 19 or 20 mortal wounds from Blizzard, which was just incredible. But he left the alpha here with 1 wound left, which was critical because that kept the Kronspine tied down in his territory for his turn. So that's big because now he can't move it into my lines. I think if we were to probably re-rack and play this again, he might take the first turn just so he can force that thing to go wild and move up the board so it doesn't get pinned into his territory and get into me. I think maybe that would have been a good play. Get it leveled up, get it wild over into my territory, and put pressure on me. But I was successfully able to pin the Kronspine back for his turn. He did kill off that Agrodon in his turn, but that held him back. He brought his Varangard over here on the left side and made the charge into the Stegodon and was able to fight twice with that unit and kill off the Stegodon. I don't think I did much damage back to it. He was able to summon in this Lord of Change on his turn and charge that into the Bastiladons. So I'm not feeling great right here because he's got my monsters on the left side tied up with all of these units, and then the monsters on my right side are going to have to deal with his Kronspine if he gets to the double. On the next turn, he's able to bring this Kronspine down here and attack a Stegodon, and we're basically just stuck in combat over here. He miscasts on his Lord of Change, and he only had a few wounds left after shooting and all that kind of stuff and melee. And he ended up killing off his Lord of Change from a miscast. That was brutal. But then on my turn, I was able to sneak a Stegodon onto his objective. And then I think I held on to the next turn and held on to his objective again. And then on the following turn, he wasn't able to kill it off. And so I held his objective with a Stegodon for 3 turns, which means I was scoring like max points. I was scoring 3, 4, 5, 6 on the objectives, and then 2 for my battle tactics. I was scoring 8 a turn, and I was just able to jump out ahead of him so much further than that because he wasn't able to take my objective from me. I wasn't really ever able to kill the Varangard. They were very tough. I kept whittling them down. He would retreat them. I'd get back into them. I think by the end of the game, I killed them, but they were quite difficult to deal with. He did send these Karak Acolytes around. He has another unit over here to score Surround and Destroy and get those battle tactics. I was eventually able to shoot off 1 unit, but couldn't get the other one, and he was able to prevent my grand strategy by getting 1 unit into my territory. By the end of the game, here's kind of how we ended. The Kronspine had tagged up 3 monsters here, but wasn't ever able to kill them off. So I was able to keep using this Carnosaur here, which was my general, to give all-out defense to whoever he was attacking. After some monsters' actions would fail, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was able to keep these monsters alive, just barely. That Bastiladon was tough, took a lot of hits, and then I was able to put my attack into these Vanguard and eventually clear them off. This guy was just a thorn in his side, that Stegodon, just sitting there scoring his objective the whole game. I think eventually he killed it off, maybe by the end of the turn, but just not quite enough damage to kill off the monsters between the Vanguard and the Kronspine. So I ended up winning that one, and it was a good game. It was a lot of fun. There were some scary moments there, but I think my MVP was definitely this Stegodon being able to grab his objective and just hold on to that. Again, every time I play with the Stegodon, they do so incredibly well with me at just grabbing objectives and holding on to them and just being a nuisance, because they can be harder to kill than you think with the -1 damage, having so many wounds that they do, having monstrous actions, being +1 to save if you're 5 or less models. They can be difficult to kill. So MVP for that game definitely goes to the Stegodon. On to round 2. I'm playing Jacob, and he's got Blades of Khorne. You can see his list here. A lot of heroes, a lot of drops. I think it was like 13 drops or something. The things I was most worried about was probably the Bloodthirster, his General, and then his Gorgon could do a lot of damage. I wasn't too worried about like his Hexgorger Skulls, just because I don't have that many casts. I don't know that they were ever on the board or really ever relevant. He may have cast them once. The let's see, all these other, the Ritualist has a crazy cool attack where it does like D6 damage, which was kind of scary one time. That almost got me. Scar is a very interesting piece where he's able to run and charge that thing, get it into combat, and it's just supposed to die. And when it dies, it does Blood Tithe, and then I think on a 5-up, he rolls every phase if it's still dead, and on movement phase. On a 5-up, it comes back. So it came back like 3 or 4 times maybe, and then died quite a few times. So a very good piece. I was feeding him a lot of Blood Tithe points because he has so many units that I was killing off, but that was giving him a lot of Blood Tithe. These Blood Warriors here ended up being a pretty tough target to take down. Like we had, I would end up putting my Bastiladons into them because they have a 3-up save. I think he had them on all-out defense a lot, and then had a prayer that gave them another, Bronze Flesh gave them another +1 to save. So they were very tough to kill, but that's kind of what I brought my Bastiladons for. So I'd shoot my Stegodons into the weaker units and then my Bastiladons into those Blood Warriors because they were so tough. We were playing Won't Back Down. This is I'm not a fan of this deployment zone, but it worked out for me here because I have a lot of long range stuff. So I'm going to back up pretty far back and line up this far back. I know I'm going to give him first turn, so he's going to have to move up the board, get closer to me. If I get a double turn worth of shooting, worth of Agrodons, then I can really do a lot of damage. So the twist here is if you rally while you're basically on an objective, then you don't have to spend a command point for it, which is pretty good. I think I rallied a couple Agrodons. He rallied quite a few units. He had a couple units that rallied on like 4s and 5s, I think. So pretty good there. Other than that, it's just hold 1, hold 2, hold more. And then I don't think there's anything else too fancy there. Yeah. So here's our deployment. You can see I'm pretty far back. I kind of put my pyramid here as a blocking piece. And my general basically hides behind this because his grand strategy is to kill my general and his Bloodthirster be alive, I believe. And so I'm hiding my general back behind this pyramid and hoping that he can't get to him. You can see his Scar is moving up the field. This was his first turn, so he's gonna run. I think he had a hero phase move, and then he runs and he charges. So I'm pretty far back, and knowing that he's gonna go he's gonna move first, and then I'm gonna have a chance to shoot and move after that. So, let's see. Not a whole lot happened turn 1. I think he ended up failing a battle tactic. He could only auto run one of these guys, and then had to roll for the other one. And he was doing Surround and Destroy and didn't quite get the roll he needed, so I think he failed that one. And so then I get a full turn of shooting on my turn, and I don't actually move up that much because this was really the only piece he moved up. It charged here and then got killed in Unleash Hell from the Basildons who were protecting those Agrodons. So he didn't really do any damage to me. Killed it, got him a Blood Tithe point. He ended up, I think he came back maybe this turn, maybe on my turn, back behind me maybe or something. Or maybe that was his turn. But, so not a lot of movement. He got enough to hold one, hold two, hold more, but didn't really move any of the scary pieces up the board. So on my turn, I just move in enough to shoot, to grab an objective, and I kind of start pushing this Carnosaur this way, hoping that if I get the next turn, I can charge it in, maybe do some damage, but if nothing else, just be a big distraction that way while my Stegodons hold those objectives. So he wins the priority, but there's really nothing he can do because I didn't move up. So we're kind of staying in the same spot. So he gives it to me, which I think was the right decision. He knows he's gonna get charged by some stuff, but if that means I'm gonna have to make my move at this point. So he gives me the priority turn into 2. And at this point, I'm like, I've got to send in my Agrodons. I mean, I don't have to, but I think if I get double turn, then he'll be able to kill off a lot of stuff. So at that point, I think I've moved up maybe a little bit, and my Agrodons were able to make a charge over here and I was able to tie up both these guys and the Gorgon. The Gorgon is kind of what I wanted to kill with the Agrodons, and I don't quite do it. But I'm able to pull both of them into combat, which will keep them locked down so that I'll have a chance to shoot them off over the coming turns. I'm also able to charge in my Carnosaur right here into this little pocket here, and the non-general Carnosaur, and take on these. What were they? The Skull Reapers, which I think do quite a bit of damage, but have a worse save. So that's a good target for my Carnosaur to go into. And I think he ended up killing them off that turn. So I was able to shoot my Stegodons into them on that same turn, and then work the Carnosaur in to kill off the rest of them. So the charges from the Carnosaur and the Agrodons wasn't just like a gimme charge. They were fairly difficult. So I rolled high on both of those charges and made in what I needed to get. And so that was pretty critical. So things were going my way with that turn. I don't think he was probably hoping that I wasn't going to make some of those charges because they were a little bit longer. Agrodons have a +1, so they were able to get in a little bit more reliable than the Carnosaur was. I may have had to re-roll the Carnosaurs. But I was able to take the board with my Stegodons, one Stegodon here, one Stegodon here. I think I had a Stegodon here, and then my Basildons back here guarding this objective and my general. On his turn, he ends up coming in and killing off this Carnosaur, but it keeps his guys kind of back here out of the way and wasn't able to play the board as much as he had wanted. On his turn, he was able to, this may have been a little bit later in the game, he was able to summon in a big block of Bloodsecrator. No, Bloodsecrator's like a hero or something. I don't know. The demon guys on foot with the big giant swords. He used a whole bunch of Blood Tithe points, summoned in like 20 of those dudes, and made the charge onto my general. Ooh, that was scary. The general ended up surviving by like 1 wound, which I think failed him a battle tactic. But more importantly, kept them kind of locked down, so I was able to respond on my next turn. So my general did die. And so towards the end of the game, I had no heroes left. That was kind of rough. But I had enough shooting where I was able to take out the what's it called? Bloodthirster. I was able to take out the Bloodthirster that was getting into combat with a Stegodon, and was able to clear off the guys that he had deep striked back here. The Gorgon eventually fell to just some shooting, got tied up in combat. I think the Gorgon kind of whiffed on one combat with the Agrodons. Agrodons survived. I was able to rally a couple back once they got out of combat and played the board pretty well. So At one point, I think I was holding basically all of these objectives, and he only had this one back here. So by the end of the game, I was able to shoot off most of what was on the board and win the game. Got my battle tactic on this one because the unit he had back here in the back, I was able to finish off in shooting. So about as well as I could have hoped for that match. I think the board helped me in that I was able to stay pretty far away from him and shoot off a lot of stuff. But that 3 damage shooting was pretty good. Pretty good. Game 3, I'm playing against Juan and Hammers of Sigmar. So he's got, let's see, what do we got? He's got an interesting unit here with the Severith, the ally fox from Lord LRL, Lumineth Realm Lords. And a very interesting piece, extremely mobile, very, very fast, and can kill off terrain pieces very easily. So has some decent shooting, probably a little bit better at picking off little small heroes, not quite as good against the big monsters. It just doesn't quite do enough damage, but a nice little ally piece he's got. He has a Knight Arcanum with Merciless Blizzard. I'm going to have to stay away from that thing. Knight Incantor with Eater of Magic. So he actually does end up eating Mystic Shield at some point in this game, which was kind of fun. Lightning Blast to do some mortal wounds. He's got Lord Imperatant to let his Annihilators deep strike outside of 7. And Luckstone on the Lord Imperatant, which is a kind of nice pick there to make sure you can guarantee that charge from 12 inches away. For Imperatant, which is good for, different parts of the game, battle tactics, just getting, once he's provided his role of getting the Annihilators in, you can send him in to do stuff that doesn't matter anymore. Battle line, Tempesters, 4 Tempesters. These are the things I'm probably most worried about against this. I play against this kind of list a lot versus Axton, my son. And Tempesters are able to pretty reliably lift a Stegodon a turn. With the amount of shooting they do, it's all either mortal wounds or 1 damage attacks, and so they can really do a lot of damage versus my army because they don't have multi-damage attacks unless they charge. So the other units are 2 units of 3 Annihilators or Grand Hammers. I'm not as worried about them because I'm reducing their damage from 3 down to 2. They already have, they have very low number of attacks, but do a lot of damage. So I can reduce that damage. Monstrous actions are very brutal against them. So if they're not Natural Templars, they're very susceptible to monstrous actions, which comes in pretty handy. Stomp can just straight up kill one. If I can make them fight last with the Stegodon, if I can charge with the Stegodon, that's very good. Roar is good against them, so now they're hitting on 3s. So very susceptible to monstrous actions. So I feel better about them. The one threat I'm worried about is the Tempesters. We also have the Vanguard Raptors with long strike crossbows. Very good, not quite as good against monsters just because, they're looking for that priority target, the soft spot to snipe and do mortal wounds to. Some Vanguard Hunters for battle tactics. He's pretty high drops, 11 drops. The thing is, he can keep a lot of this stuff off the board, and that's kind of what he does. Oh, you know what? I don't even have a picture for deployment here. But he's going to keep a lot of this off the board and not prevent much of a target. We're in this battle plan called Total Conquest, which has some pretty odd deployments here because you're in these corner sections. So I think that kind of benefits him because he's got a lot more movement than I do. The twist here is you get an extra point if you basically take an objective off of your opponent. So if they are holding it and you take it back from them, you get an extra point there. So somehow I didn't get any pictures from this, so I'm just going to have to draw on the screen here. But I set up in such a way, I have my terrain piece here kind of just as a block. And then I'm going to send some monsters this way, and then I line up the rest of them to go attack these 2. I'm just going to ignore this one because it's kind of blocked by my terrain piece, and it's closest to him. And he ends up going pretty heavy onto this one, and he holds this one most of the game, or he may have held that one all of the game, I think. But I'm just going to focus on these other 3. I make him go first. He puts some Hunters here, some Liberators here, but basically everything else is off the board. He's got some Vindictors and a hero over on this one, and that's about it. So there's not really a whole lot of targets on the board for me to attack. I send my Agrodons to just go fight the Liberators, and now the Agrodons create a nice little screen here. I've got one Carnosaur and a Stegodon, and I send one Stegodon to go fight the Hunters that are over here, kill off most of them, take that objective back, and then put my General Carnosaur, Stegodon, and then Bastillodon's kind of in the back screening. I want my Bastillodons back there because I know that they can probably take the charge from any Annihilators that are coming in. My Agrodons can take the charge from Annihilators on the front. And then this is probably my weakest spot here, but it's got my General, who I think had Mystic Shield at that moment, and then a Stegodon to help screen him. So, about as good a... I just grab the objectives with all my monsters, and it's basically a hold on as long as I can. On his turn, he gets priority, and he gives it to me. Because literally he's got nothing on the board. So I think he wants to set up for a double turn, and that's smart. So he realizes that I've got nothing to shoot right now. I've got nothing to attack, and so he's just going to leave the most of his stuff off the board. Oh, so I had to take I get the double turn from 1 to 2, but there's really nothing for me to do. I forgot on his turn he did bring the Fox down here and killed off my terrain piece, and then so he stomped it. And on my turn, I was able to shoot off the Fox with my monster. So I don't know that was, if we were to do it again, he might not sacrifice the Fox that way. The Fox gives him a lot of mobility. He did kill off my terrain piece, but that's 270 points to kill off that terrain piece, which is good. It helps my monsters fight at full bracket, and I would have surrounded it a little bit more with more monsters. But in the end, I don't think it was a big piece for the game, and he sacrificed 270 points to kill it off. So might be something that might change if we were to re-rack and play it again. At the end of his bottom of 2, he takes a turn. He drops in Tempesters here, and sure enough, kills off one Stegodon that was holding that. He drops in Annihilators back behind me here to try to attack my flank. Basically doesn't want to mess with the Agrodons at the moment, and does some mortal wounds, but fails that 7-inch charge. Which, to be honest, if he had made the charge, he would have had to charge into my shooting. I'm probably going to shoot one off. I'll stomp another one off, maybe. It's just the minimum unit of those guys just isn't going to quite do enough damage versus these monsters. So he doesn't make the charge. He does some mortal wounds and stuff, but doesn't make the charge with those Grand Hammers. And so they're kind of stuck out there. That's a big critical flaw of the Annihilators, is they have to make that 7-inch charge. If they don't do it, they're worthless. He does get the double turn and pushes the Tempesters into this flank here, drops the other Annihilators down, and then charges both Annihilators. But I'm able to do what I was talking about. I'm able to, I get a redeploy. I get a sweet redeploy with the Agrodons to block off my Carnosaur that was right here from the Tempesters that were trying to get in, and the Annihilators that were trying to get him. So that was kind of nice. Agrodon screened for that. But both Annihilators get into combat, and they don't kill what they were attacking. Between all my monstrous actions and the Unleash Hell, I was able to keep those guys alive. And then on my turn, I was able to clear off the Annihilators. So at my turn, the Annihilators are gone. I'm into his Tempesters. I charge him with the Agrodons to soak up their Unleash Hell. I'm able to take this objective back and eventually cleared off the Tempesters. So at that point, I've killed off most of his main threats. He's got a couple heroes down over here. He's got his snipers that he had dropped here to try to control the board this way, but they weren't too much of a threat. And he just didn't have enough board presence after that to kill off any more monsters. And I was able to hold on to the board for the rest of the game and won that one. So it was close. It wasn't like a runaway or anything, but losing both of the Annihilators and the Tempesters there in maybe turn 3, bottom of 3 maybe. I think that sealed the deal there. I was able to successfully stay out of Merciless Blizzard range, and he had lined one up to do it on maybe a next turn, but I was able to kill him off with some shooting. before he was ever able to get Blizzard off. So I never really had to Alpha Strike the Agrodons, and they never got in range for Merciless Blizzard. That's kind of their kryptonite. So great matchup there. It was a lot of fun, a lot of movement around the board, and monsters held on tight for me and held those objectives. So well done. So in conclusion, man, I had a ton of fun with this Thunderlizard list. I think I may take it again. If I were to change anything, maybe it's Arcane Tome. Maybe I switch out the artifact. Don't go with him being a wizard. Give him a Nullstone icon. Give him a different artifact like maybe Sotek's Gaze or the extra rend on his spear. Maybe that's what I do. But it's hard to not have that turn one battle tactic of Mystical Domination. That one is just an easy one to do turn one. And so it's hard to go away from that one. Even though you have an easy one, if you take a Nullstone icon, it makes it difficult to turn. I mean, you can't score those usually turn one if you're forced to go first. So I really like the list. There's not really a whole lot of points to massage or adjust here. You could drop a Carnosaur to take in a Antorian Locust unit, but at that point, you're probably you're ending up with a weird amount of points left, like 90 to maybe 100 points, which you don't really have much that I'd want to do with this list that would add to that. So went 3-0, did very well. A lot of shooting. That's probably the nice thing about this list is I've got a lot of shooting. I've got an Alpha Strike. I've got a melee hammer that can tie him up for a little bit, and then a lot of some tricks with the Old Bloods on Carnosaurs to keep everybody buffed up when they need to be. So I really enjoyed the list, and maybe the one thing I might change would be the grand strategy: Repel Corruption. Let's see. I think I did get it 2 games out of the 3, so it's not bad, but maybe there's one that I could take that would have been a little bit easier. The shooting does help out a lot with Repel Corruption because as long as you have a chance there at the end of the game to shoot off what would be the threat to get into your territory, you can usually get it. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. Let me know what you think about my list, and we'll see you next time.